Hi, my name's Rich, and today we're going to be talking about the Hexblade Warlock. It's a magnet for edgelords. I don't know why, but they just seem naturally attracted to it. I think there are four main factors contributing towards the appeal of the Hexblade. The fact that you have blades, and you can teleport with some of the spells. It's naturally an angsty backstory character, unless you want to deviate from the tropes. And edgelords tend to want to be the most powerful player in the game, so min-maxing is more inclined for them. If you want to build a Hexblade, then I'm going to go through some of the feats, abilities, and some of the races as well. And this guide can help you build your first Hexblade Warlock. First off, what is a Hexblade Warlock? You make a pact with a sentient magic weapon, carved from the stuff of shadow. And this idea has been around for many different generations of the D&D game. The story involves a lot of shadows and dark spooky magic from Shadowfell. For 5th edition, it was first introduced in the Unearthed Arcana in 2017, and it was a little bit different when it was first made. The Hexblade we know now at level 6 gets a spooky ghost thrall creature to help it out, but originally it had like a shadow beast, like a shadow cat. But this ability was modified and then given to the Shadow Sorcerer, so there has been some deviation from the original. Coincidentally, I'll leave a link to the Unearthed Arcana it was mentioned in because it does have lots of new eldrtich invocations and a different patron, the Raven Queen. I'll be covering the Raven Queen in a different video, but for now let's focus on the Hexblade. For the Hexblade, out of the races, I would choose the Half-Elf, specifically the High Half-Elf, because it gets natural boost to charisma, which is what you're going to be basing your damage on, and as a high elf it gets the ability to choose a cantrip, which allows you to pick up Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade. The other natural pick from the player's handbook is the Tiefling, a boost to charisma, and they have hellish resistance as well, which is always quite handy. If we're going further outside the box, if you go to Mythic Elvices of Theros, you can choose the Satire. They get the charisma boost, but they also get mirthful leaps. You can essentially jump in and out of combat as a Satire. Also, in the book Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, there are lineages which take place of races, and one of the lineages is the Hexblood. With the Hexblood, you get the natural built-in ability to curse people, to hex people, and this goes hand in hand with the Hexblade because some of its abilities are based around casting the Hex spell. Out of the abilities, I've chosen 4 in total. The first one is Charger. This essentially lets you charge in and use your bonus action as a dash and be able to attack. And it's technically a melee attack, so it does work with the Hexblade. My next choice is Eldritch Adept, just because another Eldritch invocation is always helpful. Thirdly, Inspiring Leader is from the player's handbook. It allows you to buff up the party with extra hit points, and it shows that you care for the party, it's not just about yourself. Finally, I would recommend the Magic Initiate Bard, because it's based on charisma. It uses the same scores for your Warlock invocations and spells, and you can pick up something like Fairy Fire, which is a great melee-based trick to have up your sleeve. Another option is Healing Word to help bring people back in a fight. I'm not saying the Hexblade makes a good healer, but having that in your back pocket in case of emergencies is always helpful. At level 3 for the Pact boons, the natural choice is Pact of the Blade. It has perfect synergy with the Hexblade Warlock, but I wouldn't count out Pact of the Chain as well. If you choose Pact of the Chain over Blade, you will be losing out on getting the Eldritch invocation that allows you to attack twice with an attack action. But with Pact of the Chain, you can command your familiar to aid you, so you can essentially get advantage on attacks. And this is really helpful because some of the Hexblade's abilities allow you to score a critical hit on a 19 and a 20. Out of the Eldritch invocations, the obvious picks are the ones that are tied to your Pact as well. So if you choose Pact of the Blade, that's Improved Pact Weapon and Eldritch Smite. I'm not sure about recommending Armor of Shadows because you have proficiency in medium armor, so I don't know if Armor of Shadows is worth taking up your Eldritch invocation slot. There are more appropriate things you can choose. Eldritch Mind will help out with concentration spells, so if you're casting Hex, this could be quite relevant. And make sure you check out Maddening Hex. You need to be level 5, but this can really give you a high boost to your Hex damage. Bear in mind you have to be in 30 feet of your target, so take that into consideration. From the expanded spell list, the Hexblade gets every tool you could need if you're going to be a melee fighter. The shield spell is one of the most powerful first level spells in the game, and I don't know if I'd be using the high level version of it because it doesn't scale up. but it's well worth having at low levels. At second level, you do get Blur, which is good defense, and Branding Smite, which does increase. At higher levels, you're going to be dealing more damage, and it's great for dealing with creatures that can go invisible, or creatures that teleport around the area as well. At third level, you gain Blink and Elemental Weapon. Now, Blink is a fantastic mobility spell. It does take one action to cast, so keep that in mind. And Elemental Weapon is good, but it's not great. If you're fighting a creature that has a specific weakness to an element that you're aware of, acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder, then it does have a good advantage, but make sure you have an idea of what it's weak against before you start using Elemental Weapon. Phantasmal Killer and Staggering Smite are the spells you get at level 4. Phantasmal Killer is affected a lot by if they make the saving throw or not. It's a wisdom saving throw, so if you get it, great, but if you don't get it, then you can feel like you've wasted your turn, and quite a high spell slot as well. Staggering Smite is not fancy, but it gets the job done really effectively. 46 damage, it's psychic damage, so a lot of creatures are not resistant to it, and it has disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks, and it can't take reactions for a turn if it fails its wisdom saving throw. And finally, Banishing Smite and Cone of Cold. Cone of Cold goes up with your level, so this works well with the Warlock, and it's an area of effect, a 60-foot cone, so this can help deal with a lot of creatures at the same time. But Banishing Smite is the real centerpiece of the expanded spell list. Dealing a potential 50 extra damage is nothing to be sniffed at. Next we'll go over the abilities, and starting at level 1 you get Hexblade's Curse. You can curse a target as a bonus action for 1 minute. This is great because you get bonus damage to your attacks, you can get a crit on a 19 and 20, and if the creature dies, you can get some bonus hit points back. It's tied to a short rest, so don't be afraid to use it in every combat encounter when you have it available. It does only affect one creature unless you modify the Hexblade's Curse in some way. Just make sure you're in range first, because you have to be within 30 feet of it, which is charging distance if you choose the charger feat. Also at level 1, you get Hex Warrior. You're proficient in medium armor, shields, and martial weapons. This opens up a library of different items, weapons, armors you can use. It's not optimal to use a two-handed weapon, so a shield and a weapon is normally the way to go. And you can use your charisma instead of your strength or dexterity when you roll an attack with the weapon. You have to channel one weapon at a time, and you can change the weapon every long rest, but this does have a lot of synergy with Pact of the Blade, because you can extend the benefit to every pact weapon you conjure with that feature. At level 6 you gain a Cursed Spectre. When you kill someone, you can essentially raise the ghost from their corpse and use that as like an assistant. It has its own initiative and it obeys your verbal commands. It can attack, but here's the best thing about it, it can also help you. So if you use the aid ability, you can let it give you advantage on your attacks. You can only do this once every long rest, but I think that this can be a really powerful ability in combat, having a Spectre aid you and help you out, but the downside is the moral implications. If you're role-playing with the rest of the group, there is a lot of consideration to take into account, especially with paladins and clerics. They might be a little bit shocked and appalled by raising a ghost and using it for your bidding. For a more spooky campaign like Strahd, this is fantastic, but if you're playing a more light-hearted campaign, then maybe take that into consideration. At level 10, you gain the Hexblade's most powerful ability, Armor of the Hexes. When you curse something, if it hits you with an attack roll, you can use your reaction to roll a d6. If it's 4 or higher, the attack will miss you. Which sounds very simple, it's only 2 lines of text, but this can make you go toe-to-toe with a Tarask. You could take down the most powerful creatures in the game just by rolling lucky. The fact that each creature when it attacks you has a 50-50 chance of not hitting you is ridiculously powerful, and to be frank, I would have put this at level 14 instead of 10. Speaking of level 14, you get Master of Hexes. You can use your Hexblade's Curse and then swap it to another creature when the first creature dies. Now this implies you're going to be killing a lot of creatures in a row. You don't regain the hit points, but the benefit of the Curse and Hexes greatly outweighs the deficit of not getting your temp hit points. If you're interested in any of the other Warlock subclasses, then there's a playlist down below in the pinned comment with all of the other subclasses I've covered so far. If you want to help support the channel, On my Patreon, I have free subclasses to download, or if you'd like to help out the channel, you gain access to all the subclasses I've published before. We're currently at 5, and I want to try and hit 12 by the end of the year, and try to release a compilation of these subclasses as a book of its own. If you get a chance, check out my video where I created a dragon patron. I decided to make one because they won't be putting a dragon patron in Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, and I thought it was a natural fit for the Warlock, so yeah, if you're interested in that, check it out.